teach people that it matters what they think, that the organization is structured to be trustworthy in the fact that if we say, if you've got a problem, bring it to us, we want to get it resolved, that you do every time.
Hey Mills, I'm so glad that you could join us today. Welcome to the Worthy to Lead podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here. I've been thinking about it all week. I've been very excited.
I love that. So we're so glad to have you here. I want to jump right in and start talking about things that are going to be important on people's minds. So I would love to hear just a little bit about your journey and how conflict resolution came to be part of your leadership and your coaching work.
Well, my background is mostly been small companies doing operations of one kind or another, everything from commercial building product sales to commercial building services to home services to regional economic development to IT services for big companies, and the last 14 years or so, medical devices. But all through that process, I used everything that I do, and I also now have for several years now done consulting with strategic change partners, easy for me to say. And the part about the conflict, right? The simple way of saying it, I guess, is I really, really, really just love people. I just do. It is, people to me are this amazing resource, this amazing tapestry of just abundance and just things I could just sit and be with all day. And one of the things that I saw was that the amount of conflict and stress and friction and just when there were problems in the workspace left people just drained by the time they got home. There was nothing left of them to give to the things they really love in this world, their family, their communities, their projects and charities and whatever. They were just burnt by the time they got home. I didn't like that. And I kind of started looking for what could actually make a difference in that. And that's kind of how I got here.
There are so many people that are suffering, and you see that suffering, and you found this unique way to add value to help them be present for their families, to help them have more energy, more space within their work. I love that.
Yeah. Thank you. You said it better than me. That was really good.
I mentioned before that you've had several wonderful teachers, and one of those wonderful organizations that taught you was Landmark. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience? Because I know that experience isn't necessarily a walk in the park either.
Yeah, Landmark Education, they've been around since the 70s, and they are incredibly rigorous. They are just, boy, there is no wiggle room in what they do and the way they teach and the points they're trying to get across. And a lot of it revolves around language dynamics and how that can make a difference in your life, and also kind of like a great amount of work on where do you stand in something, right? You're kind of like, better way to say standing is when people think about, I'm going to plant a flag about this. I'm going to produce these kinds of results. And I'm going to, that's my commitment, my declaration is I'm going to do that in a way that actually serves the people and doesn't just burn them out. And so that was a lot of work for me particularly, because I'm from rural southern Louisiana, and thinking about those kind of things and forming a practice around them, that was a whole nother planet for me. And so it took a lot of work, a lot of years, but I was thrilled with the results that I got from it.
Can you just talk about you mentioned the sensation, the stress, the chaos, the noise, everyone's running around with their hair on fire, all of these things are happening, and you have to be that calm presence throughout all of that and be clear about what are we accomplishing and help people get to that point. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Being in the middle of that, everybody's hair on fire, and I need to be the calm center of it, right? Well, it's funny you mentioned that in particular, because one of the things I did with them is I volunteered for about 10 years, all right, of seminars from as small as 20 or 30 people on a Wednesday night, just kind of weekly thing, to a massive event with 500, 800 people showing up. And you've got a whole team and things aren't going well, and who's going to manage it, right? It was, saying, well, we did our best was not going to ever fly. And so what you learned was to watch for the people in the space, right? Yes, there's a timeline, and yes, there's things that need to get done. And being that calm center was really a process of being able to look at everyone and see where their capacities were realistically, and then guide them to what can they do effectively. And there's pressure because the people are coming in and the thing starts in 10 minutes and oh my goodness. But if you hand them something that they know they can get done, they go have that win, man. They get it done. And there's a shared commitment. That particular organization is really big about the shared commitment. You meet with the team before, you guys are get really grounded, really clear. They kind of communicate out whatever they need to so that they're totally present. And then they go into the space. And then they're going to be a human while they're there. So you got to being with them and watching them. And that's been incredibly effective in those kinds of situations and in the workplace as well.
I love how you talked about being present and looking for what is happening with the other people in the room. Like, first of all, you have to get yourself under control, your own mental fires or alarms or fears, concerns, in order to be present for others and then be able to kind of scan the room and say, who is it that needs to get what done? Are they capable to do that right now? I'm curious, you mentioned also like that creates growth within a relationship when you can learn how to do these things. Can you just unpack a little bit more what that relationship building piece looks like within this practice?
Absolutely. It's actually one of my very favorite pieces. And when you're faced with a conflict of some kind, whether it's you and somebody else or you're kind of mediating it, whatever that looks like, in order to get to the other side of it, you're going to have to learn something more about everybody involved, especially if it's you and someone else and you're going through that conflict resolution process. It's impossible to get to the other side without becoming more vulnerable, becoming more educated on who they are and what actually matters to them in this world, and being able to stand shoulder to shoulder and look at something that seems unfixable in the moment and fix it and get creative and come to the other side of it and then agree that that's a fix and agree to keep checking in to see what else pops up as we go along, because we're now beginners in this part of the process.
It seems like a lot of people avoid conflict because they're afraid that it will irreparably damage the relationship. Right. Well, it's too scary to bring up this or that thing, or where my values have been violated, or where I felt like I was let down, because the other person is not going to want to be in relationship with me because of XYZ. And so therefore I should just avoid it or steamroller or not build that relationship in the first place, because I know we have to have conflict and now, got to work through that armor that we have to build in the corporate setting. And what you're saying is kind of the complete opposite. It's like with the right tools, you can confidently enter into a situation where it might be a conflict at the beginning, or it might be an unresolved situation, and know that at the end of it, not only are you going to get a resolution, but you might even get a stronger and better relationship as part of that too.
Absolutely. That is exactly how it works. And I think you pointed to the thing really great, is like, it's having the confidence in that tool and knowing that the work works. I hear that. I've been hearing that for 35 years. The work works, right? It's and you may need to see that. You may need to hear from other people that have gone through it, or whatever kind of validation and credibility you want to build on it. But if you can believe that this process is actually going to get the job done, it's a lot easier to take that step forward. And I have so much respect for people who are willing to step past that thing. It is not simple in the beginning, and it takes courage to take that risk and to trust when you're going through it the first time. So yeah, sometimes you need a hand, somebody, a little guide through, a little extra help. That's absolutely appropriate.
And I feel like there's probably a lot of unlearning that needs to happen first, which is, I may have thought this is how conflict should have been handled. This is how I was raised, or this is what I've seen in the workplace from others. And so therefore, I think that's how conflict is handled, but it doesn't resolve. It doesn't end well. It doesn't end with relationship building. It ends with a lot of, we may have accomplished a goal, but someone lost along the way, and they lost big. And now there's damage and there's repairs that need to be made. And so that process of, okay, maybe what I've learned up until this point, I need to unlearn some of those behaviors before I can can even move forward with, here is something that will work, and have trust in that process.
Absolutely. It is critical. But yeah, it is a bit of relearning. It is a bit of resetting expectations. It is a bit of getting some agreements even before we start the process so that we're all really clear. And so absolutely.
So I'm going to walk through just the high level framework and talk about kind of the steps that are in this 7-step process. And then I'd like for us to really dive deep into each one, and you can kind of tell me more context and, share any stories or things like that come to mind. And I feel like a lot of this mimics the benefits of coaching. And so as we think about coaching behaviors around listening and mirroring and understanding and being aware of emotion or blockers or things like that, there's a lot of similarities in the skill sets and the skill building around this. And that's why I'm so fascinated by it. So I'm going to just quickly run through the framework, and then we can jump in. All right. So the acronym for these 7 steps is be the leader. So it starts with B, which is around being prepared. The leader portion, so L for leader, is around listening and learning more, especially about concerns and unmet needs. The E is about exploration, so exploring possibilities, exploring the unknown. A is asking if you listened accurately. D is discover. So what are some of the standards that have been violated, or the values, the things that each party brings to the table? Really understanding those in depth. E is evaluate. So what is a standard of operation that will work for both parties? Like, what's it going to take to get those things into sync? And then R, the last R in leader, is about a request for future action and resolution. So let's go back to the beginning with B, around be prepared. And I know you started to talk a little bit about this. Tell us what that means in this context.
Absolutely. And before I do that, I want to jump in with one extra little piece, which is inside of the context of what we're doing, we use the 5 speech acts, right? In our methodology, pretty much everything that's said or thought will fall into one of 5 categories. An assessment, like you're describing something. A declaration, you're saying, this is who I am in the matter. This is how this is going to go. You're declaring it. A request, an ask of any kind or nature. An offer, something that's being proffered without request. And a promise, any kind of an agreement, any level of agreement, whether ironclad or just kind of a general agreement, it's a cultural agreement or whatever, those 5 categories. So those would be important as we move through the process. With regard to B, the most important piece about the B is really getting yourself clear, right? You don't do this process when you're angry or upset or reactivated or whatever. You do this process when you've cleared out everything, you're very calm, you've made a declaration for yourself that there's more to articulate and bring forth here. There's more to learn here. This is my stand in the matter, that I am going to avoid making assumptions, and I'm going to listen and be present. Really, one of the most powerful things you can do, because a lot of times, even people that are experienced in this, right, somebody comes in, you're going to have body sensations, right? You're going to have, maybe your stomach will get knotted up. Maybe your chest will get tight. Maybe your throat will get tight. It's really important and incredibly useful to articulate that. Wow, my throat's really tight. My stomach, when he said that, or she said that, my stomach got all knotted up. And really keep working on being present in your body until you can tell that your body's relaxed. You can tell that you know what your goal here is. You're clear that you've written down what you want to get out of this. Don't share it yet, but you've written down what a good result for you would be, so you have a sense of where you'd like to see things head. Now, I'm actually having both parties do this, so it's not just the facilitator. Both
That's
sides
what I was going to ask. Is it one-sided? What if the other side is still on fire? Are they?
Yeah, no. Both
everyone's got to calm down?
Yeah, everybody's got to calm down. Write down your concerns and just really kind of get all of that punchy, upset, why can't they do what I want? All that stuff. Get it out. Write a lot of it down Be clear about what's going on with your body, what's your concern that's not being addressed here, what your optimal outcome would be, and look at everything, and then schedule a time you can both have at least an hour to sit and go through this first part of this process, because you may get to the very end of it. In one setting, you may not. And then when you come into the meeting, it's thank you for taking some time to assist me with understanding this issue. I call this meeting to learn more about the situation and how we can work together, right? You want to start the meeting with a possibility, not like a problem that we're dealing with, right? And then describe the issue in factual, observable language. On this day, this document was provided. I expected it to be provided at noon. It was provided at 4 p.m. That held back me doing these 4 things. And that consequence of that was that this happened. You weren't a bad person. You weren't whatever. This is what happened. And one of the most critical pieces is to really kind of set expectations that this resolution that we're out to achieve, it's probably not going to go all your way. It's not going to go all my way, but it could be a new way, not tied to personal, but something that's really effective action for the team or the company, whatever. And really presence that this is not personal, right? It's not you're bad, I'm good, you're incompetent, I'm competent, everybody's wrong, I got something to defend, right? Because the end result is, or the kind of place to look from is, this situation is going to happen anyway, right? So it's not personal. So let's see what we can do to move through this and find something that really supports the company and our overall goals. And it may not be that I get everything I want and you get everything you want.
I'm imagining there's people who have scenarios that they need to handle where there's leaders above them that have a conflict and they want to come in as a mediator or a facilitator into that situation. Does this overall strategy work when there's a power mismatch in the dynamic?
My honest answer is that's kind of situational. And what I always try to move forward for is that I absolutely love when there's that power dynamic difference, right? Because it is an opportunity, it's a huge opportunity for both sides. Because that 1 level up, 2 levels up, whatever executive has the opportunity to build a tremendous amount of trust in the organization through this process. The issue is the executive willing to commit to the process? If they are, it's way better, way bigger opportunity than if it's just 2 peers. Because the 2 peers will solve their problem and have an impact for the company and do all of that. But it may not spread too far past those guys. But if an executive steps in and has that same process and presence is, hey, the E team can be trusted. They actually want to work with you. They actually are interested in what matters to you, and that ripples through the whole organization.
All right, cool. Let's move to the L, which is listen and learn more. Tell me about that one.
When you're digging for gold, the first thing you have to do is clear away the surface of, digging down. When you're digging down to get the pirate's chest full of gold, right? The first thing you have to do is get the surface stuff out of the way. That's what the listen and learn part of it is. Because many times the real thing is not the surface stuff. But you need to have a process where you go through the uncovering of the surface. You listen, what's important, what outcome are you looking for when this X action, whatever it is perceived as disruptive, occurs? What is important to you about that? And then really stop talking and listen. They need, for this process to work, to feel heard early in the process. Wow. Okay. So if you, the listener, can't keep your mouth shut and you keep wanting to defend, the process is not going to work. You might as well stop. That's your first sign that you're not committed to the process. I mean, You're not bad, but you're not there yet in the process. Clearly, there's still some more completing work to be done. There's still some more letting go of stuff work to be done, because your job is to sit and listen and learn what is the issue. You're going to let them finish. You're going to make notes and just hear them. That's what you do to start.
Is it fair to say that at some point in time after you've been doing Sherlock Holmes for a little while and you think there's a story there, to articulate, here's what I think the story is?
Absolutely. And that's what the A section is. So then A is, you say it back to them. Hey man, here's what I'm hearing that you're saying. Here's what I'm kind of understanding. You're not saying, hey, all right, so what you said was, no, you're not, we're human. We're not going to get it word for word. And people are already kind of emotional when they're trying to expose this part of getting to that process with you, which is, again, something you absolutely have to respect. It's one of the most bravest things people can do these days, is to actually step into that situation and have the courage to express what's really there. And so that it deserves a tremendous amount of respect. But you're saying, hey, did I hear accurately that you want this outcome, and that you're having difficulty with this, or you don't know how to get that result within that time frame because these things are blocking you? And that what's important to you is that you have this kind of outcome in this kind of timeline and this kind of, or whatever it is. Your best to kind of give them back and even articulate it, the things they couldn't articulate, if you can see it and feel like you're really kind of there. And you do it and with full expectation that they're going to correct you, right? That they're correcting you is them engaging in the process. Maybe they say, absolutely, that's it. Man, wow, you got it. You can see my whole body kind of relax, like, oh, somebody heard me. Or they'll say, whatever. There may be a little bit of defending or a little bit of just kind of, it makes them feel more comfortable to have a little more control right here. So, no, that's not what I meant was, and that they may explain back something that's like, it's a millimeter off of what you were saying, but they got hurt. They now know that somebody heard them and they got to say their piece again.
It's a nice way for them to do a reality check as well. And I feel like it's really similar with coaching, where it sounds like at this stage, you're not solutioning. You're not telling them, well, that's great to know because now I have the answer and I'm going to tell it to you. It's literally be a mirror, reflect, share back what you heard. Did I get it right? Be able to be corrected, be okay with being wrong. Maybe you missed something. And that's it. That's it at this stage. You're not moving into, I know how to solve this.
Yeah. You are absolutely not trying to move into, I know how to solve this. And obviously, you want to be super gracious, grateful, supportive. So when they say, no, that's not what I was saying at all, and they say back to you, and they say it, and maybe it's not what you were saying at all, man, you're like, thank you. Oh my God, I don't know how I couldn't have heard that. Or maybe it's precisely what they said, and you say, thank you, I don't know how I could have missed that. And then you kind of get to the point where, like, so you've said it, and you say it back to them again, right? If they challenge anything that you said, you hear them say it and then say it back. So now they know you heard them. And then you pause, and now it's their turn. So their turn to listen, their turn to learn, their turn to explore if they have that capability set and interest in whatever, and their turn to accurately reflect back. And now, depending on their expertise and their training in that, their capacity for doing those three things are going to be whatever they are. And it's our job as leaders to just be super graceful, super gracious with it, and just kind of be like, if there's anything that's really off, then you need to correct it. Just like, and respectfully and all of that, because you are partnering, going through something, and you've got to have the courage to keep your weight out of the room, right? That gravitas, well, I'm the boss. So, I know you may think it's that way, but no, because removing that friction will make a big difference over time. And so you support them in doing that process, and you get to the end of both having feel like you've been given a chance to speak. You have been proven that you've been heard by the person actively reflecting, and then you can go to the next step.
So if I hear you correctly, This, in essence, is you role modeling how to show up for this conversation well. You have been maybe more trained or given the questions or practiced more than someone else. But it doesn't mean that the other person can't participate on the other side and listen and reflect and whatever, even if they don't do it well, or even if they've never done it before. It sounds like it still can be effective because you sort of started by role modeling it. And then when you flip it to them, they've got a little bit more to work with, or they kind of know what to expect. And so even if they are terrible, the behaviors and the expectation of how to communicate with each other are there.
Yes, absolutely. That is exactly it. And what's beautiful about it is you really see their commitment in the process, right? There's so much gold in this process. It's not just resolving the conflict. It's how committed are they to resolving the conflict? Are you be incredibly gracious, and when it's their turn, they just spit at you and they kind of like you challenge everything and, do all this stuff. And it's like, that's okay, because that may be the training that they're at. But from where do they do that? Do they do that from just being defended and they shouldn't, rolling their eyes about being in the room in the first place? Or they do it from, this is the skill set that I have right now, but I really want this to outcome. I really do. I'm excited in my own way, in my own expression. I'm excited to be here and I really want this. And this is the best I know how to do. And if you can watch through that and really kind of honor the commitment that you see in them, it's amazing. Like, wow, he's coachable. And you figure out pretty quickly, is he coachable or is he not? You find someone who's coachable with commitment, it's worth every second you spend in the room.
I love that. And an example that comes to mind that I've seen in other lives has been teaching people how to do basic research, where we've got researchers who are excellent. They are top of their craft. They know exactly what questions to ask, how to lead someone through an interview without being leading, without telling them too much. You get just the right essence. However, teaching other people who are not trained researchers how to do basic research can be so empowering, and they can continue to learn from the experts, but then they can continue to understand the importance of what am I trying to gather here? What types of questions can I be asking? And it's just that constant refinement process. And suddenly you have an army of people who are obsessed with the customer, who are learning about the customer in their everyday interactions. They're asking better questions. They're digging into that level of curiosity, or maybe they wouldn't before, because they have that empowerment in those tools. And so I love this idea that, even if someone is terrible at this, even if I'm terrible at this and I go in and practice it, but the more people that get exposed to it and start adopting this over time, you create a culture of conflict resolution.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we'll talk about in a second. I don't want to keep us on track for going through the pieces, but there's a part there I really want to talk about. So we've done L, E, and A, and we're now up to D, right? And for D, it really is the partnership part of the conversation. Okay. I now know as much as I think I'm going to know about who you are in this process, what's important to you, what the points of friction are. You know what mine are and my concerns. I know your concerns. Okay, now come on my side of the table and let's look at this and go, how do we fix this? What are we going to do? It's fixable. There is a result here. And now you start coming up with ideas. You basically do a brainstorming session, right? That keeps focused on what is that achieved outcome? What are we trying to accomplish? What's going to work for both of us? Let's come up with a game plan. And it may be that in that first meeting, you end at the discovery phase. And then you both kind of, with a commitment of, okay, we've picked these 2 or 3. We think these are our best shots. Let's go back and do a little more work on that. How would we implement these? How would we do that? We've done a lot of great work. If that's where you stop, fantastic.
I assume that at some stages, there's going to be teams that need to be involved, where it's like, these are some actual ideas that we came up with. Now let's go back and validate with the teams who are the experts of how to actually implement this stuff. is this doable, right?
Yeah. But if it's something that, it falls across 3 different departments because the friction is he's not producing the result because there's 4 chains back that are not producing the result, then you need to pull other people in, but you see that now. You've cleared that area. You've understood that there's pieces and parts, and you've kind of take a little time to figure out how that would work. And if we need to have other people in the room, great. We'll have a meeting with other people in the room. And so that's the evaluate process. It's really getting down to what is the thing that we all agree is going to be it. And then when you've gotten to the point where you say, okay, that's it. We think that's it. The question to ask is, okay, if this was already in place, completely working, would we have had the same problem that occurred? And you have to expect that the answer is yes. There's going to be a decent percentage that the answer is no. It would have never occurred. This is perfect. But you have to expect that the answer is going to be yes. It would have happened anyway. Because that question puts them in this mindset of, okay, well, wait, hang on. So if we really implemented that, I mean, it sounds really great, but that department, I don't believe they're going to, it would do this and this would, you got to get them living in it with that question. And from living in it, they're going to say, oh, no, it would still happen. Well, why? Well, because there's this bottleneck I didn't see until right now when I actually kind of got myself in that moment.
So there's a moment here where I love that question. You're allowing people to live through the experience, imagining the experience, and then saying, like, what did we miss? Like, okay, we thought we covered everything, but actually, now that we're thinking through it, nope, this problem would still happen because of X, Y, or Z. So then once they do that evaluation and maybe they come up with a couple of gaps, then do you just continue to use that to refine your solution?
Absolutely. We roll back to the discovery phrase. Okay, here's these gaps. We found them. Great. Shoulder to shoulder again. And now we can involve anybody else whose accountability falls inside of that gap and say, this is the gap we're trying to resolve. We're not going to come in and tell you, oh, by the way, we figured out your problem for you. Now do it, because they have no ownership of it whatsoever. They're going to have to change something. They need to be part of that conversation. So we fall back into discovery. We do more brainstorming. We then move through evaluation, ask the question again. And if the answer is no, if all of these things were in place, would this have happened? This problem have happened? If the answer is no, great. Now we go to the R section, right? The last one, where we've created a structure. People have kind of lived into that structure to see if it's actually going to flow. We've made the adjustments that we need to make. Now we need to put a structure in place that's going to allow it to continue, which means there's going to be requests that need to be made. Right? And so we make those requests for future action, right? I need you to do this. I need you to be done that way, and it's take this action in this time frame, etc. And then we set up a schedule over the next 2.5, 3 months. We'll meet every other week and make sure that as we implement and as we move this new process or change process into the organization, that it doesn't start blowing stuff up. We don't get to just declare, spike the football, go to Disneyland. Now we go to implementation and we check back at whatever schedule makes sense. It could be weekly, it could be every other week, whatever schedule makes sense for the people involved. They get to make that decision. Everybody does together. And then, okay, maybe there's a little bit of tweaking here and there, but within a very short period of time, you're there.
So I'm curious, do you have an example of a story within an organization that you could tell that sort of talks about the value that they got from using this framework and, how that changed the way things were within their organization moving forward?
Sure. We were doing work with a division of an energy sector engineering and construction firm, right? And so they were tasked with building this massive gas plant. And it was not going well. So they brought us in to do some of this work. And, what became very apparent very quickly was that You had the construction. So the guys out in the field swinging hammers and, building stuff and moving giant pieces of equipment around and doing all that. And you had the engineering. The guys in the office with the cubicles and the pencils, and they're calculating all the pieces and parts and how does this gigantic thing all come together and what's size, strength, steel, and all that. And boy, did they have zero trust. And the project is, I'm not saying it's failing, but it's not doing as great as they could be. Not by any stretch of the imagination. So we got basically the leaders of those two teams together to say, so what is it that's not working? Because there's just so much conflict. There's so much friction. And at the end of the day, both sides had a dignity issue. So the requests weren't around, the requests sounded like, well, you're not giving me the plans the way I need them. And you're not telling me you're not speaking to me about what's actually needed in this blah, blah, blah. It's part of the construction. And but the problem was, you hand me stuff like I must be stupid because I'm just construction and you're the big engineer. And the engineers were, every time you talk to me, you're like some 200-pound beach guy on a little weakling. And once we got them to see that and we got them to communicate, and quite frankly, this part of finding the evaluation, what's going to fix this, right? What's going to make the change? It can take so many different forms. Because in this one, the real move the needle moment was, we said, great, we're doing a barbecue. Everybody comes. It's Friday afternoon, everybody, mandatory participation. And engineers, go sit down with a space between each seat. Do not sit with anyone in your department. Because they're look, your clique, your little whatever for that team. Do not sit with your team. Put a space in between for every seat. Construction guys, fill in the spaces. Do not sit with your team. And a couple hours later, and a ridiculous amount of barbecue, and these guys were actually talking. They're like, wait, you like the Cowboys too? You like, whatever, the Yankees, your daughter is a cheerleader. Mine's a cheerleader. Your son is, whatever. My kid loves that show, and oh my God, your 3-year-old kept you all up all night. Oh God, I remember how that was. And they actually started talking. And it turns out neither side was the devil. and they moved that needle so far that they finished the job 20% ahead of schedule. And the company profited $35 per man hour, which is somewhere I'm thinking well into 8 figures, of what they expected to spend and didn't because they finished that much sooner.
And it was a barbecue.
Yeah. It was find a way to have them not be able to sit in their own little cliques and roll their eyes at the other people, but have to communicate with them. And then another one, one of the things that we find as a theme across all of this a lot of different times is it's not you can't do this and I can't do that and they won't give me the paperwork and it's dignity. The theme is dignity across almost every major issue. I don't feel like I'm being heard. I don't feel like I'm being respected for the blood, sweat, and tears that I'm providing. I feel like I'm being spoken down to in some form or fashion, whether they are or not, doesn't really matter. But that's the kind of theme that falls across it. We worked with a home services company, this really large tree trimming company. And they were about to have a walkout of the field team. And just was like, we're done. I can't put up with this anymore. And because there was a perceived compensation issue and because the work structure with management. And lo and behold, it was dignity. There really wasn't a compensation issue. They just didn't understand how the inside folks were compensated versus how they were compensated because they had a very unique compensation structure. Almost everybody inside and outside were on commission. It was like the company, the owner was a genius. He basically said, the more work we get done, the more you get paid. And here's how we're going to structure that. And this is what it looks like. And then after having done that for a long time, he wanted some time off from the company. The folks he hired to manage from the inside just weren't used to that way of operating, and they weren't communicating clearly about certain things. And when we sat them all down, we made sure that the outside understood that they were being paid fairly. The inside understood what wasn't working because they were trying to change the old ways that were brilliant and didn't need to be changed. And everybody kind of heard each other. They took a year where they were failing to meet year-on-year numbers and increased it by 10% through the last 4.5, 5 months of the year. I mean, they really knocked some work out.
Interesting. Yeah. It just shows that the power of having these tools and to kind of nip it in the bud early to be able to figure out, diagnose what is actually happening here can save weeks or months of frustration, inefficiency, wasted time, wasted work, people quitting, like all of those downstream impacts of the length of time that you sit and struggle, that all of that can be shortened or maybe even in some cases eliminated.
Right. Absolutely. And what's really great is that what we see, kind of like what's the long-term result? Like, okay, we got that problem solved. All right, great. We have another problem tomorrow. Our business has problems, and business is doing good. So what is it that is the result of this? It builds organizational trust. When people know that when something's not working, really not working, and it matters that it works, right? Because, let's be realistic. Some of the stuff is like, we can operate around that. It's not that big of a deal. And we can't, not every single nuance is going to be dealt with, right? But when they know that if it matters, there's a process that they can go through. There are people who understand the process and who engage and encourage the process. Then they feel like, okay, my concerns matter. That leads to discretionary effort, right? It's, you want to get 6 days of productivity for 5 days of pay? Teach people that it matters what they think, that the organization is structured to be trustworthy in the fact that we say, if you got a problem, bring it to us, we want to get it resolved, that you do every time. And they're more efficient, they're more effective, they're more creative, they're happier, they're more collaborative. At the end of the day, they're healthier, they have a more balanced life, and they're more available to seize opportunities around them that support the company.
There's really no downside. There's no downside. That's incredible. Just hearing you say the list of those things gives me chills, like the power that one person can have to start this new way of handling conflict within an organization, and that over time that could be the result. That's incredible.
It is incredible. And in fact, just one quick aside, the engineering company that I was talking about really took this on, saw the value of it, said, listen, the president of the division told everybody, if you see something that's not working, or you see a big change that could impact the company, like really make a difference for us, use your channels and move it through. If for any reason you feel like it's not getting through, then come see me. Now, we've had presidents and CEOs say that before, and all the frontline staff roll their eyes and go, yeah, I'm going to walk into his office. Really? You got to be kidding me. I'm going to tromp my way off the field with my muddy boots and whatever, and I'm going to walk into his, really? Yeah. And he did the work to make that real. And one of the frontline guys, young guy, probably with the company only like less than 2 years, saw something, didn't try to move it through channels. I didn't actually move properly. Said, okay, well, he said so. Went up to his office and said, can we talk? And he's like, great guy too. The president was a great guy because he was busy. And he looked up and went, this is how I make my mark. This is what I do to have people believe me really. And said, sure, come on in. And that conversation saved them hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it would never have happened if they hadn't built the trust inside the organization that, one, we're willing to support solving problems, and two, we mean it when we say, come bring me your good ideas.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. So just to recap again, the steps of this process, and then I think we got to wrap up. The Be the Leader process for conflict resolution is to be prepared, to make sure that you figure out how to both come to the table with your senses and to understand, and then to listen and do that reflection exercise where you're gathering information, you're really hearing what their needs are, and then being able to explore and look at what are the consequences if this broke down, if we don't fix this, what might happen, really being able to summarize that effectively and say, did I get it right? And then being able to flip roles. Someone else does it back. So they, again, listen to you, they reflect what they heard, and then you go into this collaborative discovery process where you're really trying to identify what are some of the standards that have been violated, or the values, or the deep down, the center of that onion, the treasure chest. Have we found it of needs so that you can co-create a new solution that works for both parties? And then after that, there's this request. There's this future action that is committed to, and then some kind of accountability and check-ins. Did I get that right?
Almost. You're so close. So once we do the discovery, where it's basically brainstorming, then we do the evaluation, where we figure out which one it is and pick the one that we're saying is going to be the thing, and then move through that process of, does it really work, this one we picked? And then we go to the requests and put the structure in place to have it be sustainable and to keep going.
I love it. So if people are interested in doing a conflict resolution workshop or learning more about this from you, what would be a next step? How would they get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, so you can always catch me that way. And the company phone number is 713-446-8700. And Strategic Change Partners is a part of another company called the Leadership and Performance Company. But that's a lot to type. So what we normally do, what we set it up for, is that my business partner's website sends you straight there, right? So we got a little bit of our own layer of onions here, but it makes sense once you're in the process. Just trust me. So pattyschull.com, PATTYSHULL.com.
Patty was on the podcast recently and was able to talk to us a little bit more about virtuosity and kind of going from being an expert to a virtuoso. So I know that we have provided that link before, and we'll provide it again here. Both of you guys have different workshops, different things that you offer through that program, but your business in particular is the strategic change, right?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of one of my specialty areas. I also work hand in hand with Patty for the change management, leadership development of different types, and a number of other things that you can see on the site. And, we can be brought in to serve as a third party to kind of mediate and bring this process to the company. We also have a process that we can take people through that certifies them in doing this.
Oh, very cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if there's, change management type things, we'll facilitate steering committees, we'll do communications, we'll support OKR designs and all that kind of stuff. But for the conflict stuff, this is what our process looks like.
I love that you have multiple options, because I think for some people, they might say like, okay, that sounds like a lot. I would want to bring in an expert and have them handle this, for my business. I want to have it just handled, right? But then for others who are kind of practitioners who really like to learn new things, new techniques, new certifications, things like that, it's great that you have that toolkit and the process for training that you can start to create more and more of these ambassadors who can do this. I love that. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for talking through this conflict resolution path. I think it's really, really helpful for people to know that there are tool sets out there that they can use beyond maybe just their lived experience, or maybe, they're feeling jaded at how things are going in the company and you think, oh, that'll never change. But honestly, it can. And there's tool sets that are really effective and have been proven over decades to be able to solve these kinds of problems. So I really appreciate you walking through that, giving us new ideas, new perspectives, and tools to be able to work through.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I love doing this kind of stuff. It's just a total joy for me. I really appreciate the opportunity today.
Awesome. Thank you.